We need to talk about desktop Linux security. So one of the main reasons people recommend Linux in comparison to Windows is the fact that it's more secure. I think that it's pretty fair to say that desktop Linux is more secure than Windows or other options that you might have out there, but I think that we've overstated it just a little bit. We've gone a little bit too far. I would argue that by default, desktop Linux oftentimes is not as secure as you've been told. So I've got 3 reasons for you today, all about how desktop Linux isn't as secure as people say, so let's jump right into it. If you enjoy this type of content, then consider subscribing to my channel. I try to upload weekly, always a cybersecurity themed video, and if that's your jam, I'd love to have you as a subscriber, so do feel free to hit that button down below. And yeah, so let's talk about this. Alright, so reason number 1 about why desktop Linux isn't as secure as people say, and that is the fact that Linux makes security the user's responsibility. One of the great things about Linux is that it puts you in control. It makes you the captain of the ship, and you can use and abuse it however you see fit. But I'd argue that that's a problem when it comes to security. For example, updating the system is the responsibility of the user, and there are some distributions which enable automatic updates by default, but the vast majority of them make it so that the user has to explicitly run updates to get their system up to date. And that's a problem. In fact, I'll link an article down below about how Linux Mint users were not running updates in a timely manner, leading to them running vulnerable and out-of-date versions of packages. So the idea that keeping the system up to date is the user's responsibility, I would argue is quite flawed, because let's consider the average user, right? If you want Linux to get big and popular, which I certainly do, then you have to consider things from the perspective of the average person. The average person is not going to go out of their way to run updates. They're just not. It's not a thing. And so the fact that by default the user has to explicitly run updates on their own accord, and yes, maybe they get a notification, but that's it. I mean, that's never gonna fly. If desktop Linux becomes popular today, and let's say 10% of computer users are using desktop Linux, which would be amazing. Well, if that happens, then I can guarantee you 9% of those people using desktop Linux are going to have serious security flaws in their operating system because they're just not updating it in a timely manner. And also, while we're talking about the factor of the user's behavior, there's a lot of things that people do every day on Linux that are frankly not very good when it comes to security, such as running curl pipe to bash commands. Yes, it's convenient when a piece of software you want offers a one-liner commands that you can run to get it installed, but you know, that's kind of the equivalent of going online and downloading shit from random websites. Most of the time, you're not going to have the context to understand if that curl pipe to bash command is actually a good idea or not. Also, something that people do really commonly on desktop Linux is add third-party repos. Now, third-party repos will inevitably break your system, but this isn't about that. The thing is, when you add a third-party repo, you have to trust that all the packages in that repo are secure. And the fact of the matter is, the people who maintain repos, they have root access to your computer. Because if I'm controlling a repo, and I decide to push out a malicious package as an update to another piece of software, then it's going to execute on your machine as root if you run updates. Also, when it comes to malware and viruses, desktop Linux specifically, is relatively insecure. I've written several pieces of malware. I've written malware for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, and on Mac OS and Windows, most antiviruses caught this novel malware right off the bat. But Linux, because there is no antivirus, there's no anti-malware, it was able to execute those malicious scripts that I wrote without second thought. Nothing got blocked. And so this harkens back to my whole point here. Because Linux makes security the responsibility of the user, and that is just an inherently flawed philosophy. Again, let's say Linux gets popular, and 10% of people are running Linux desktops. And like I said, 9% of those are going to be very exposed when it comes to their security. So there is a fix to this. If you run an immutable operating system with automatic updates like Fedora Silverblue, then yeah, you're not going to have this problem. So the fact of the matter is, this isn't a new problem. And people, the maintainers who make Linux distributions for the desktop, they're already thinking of this. That's why we have stuff like immutable distributions. The problem is, those are not very popular. So if you're watching this considering switching to Linux, I'd highly recommend something like Fedora Silverblue. It's a great experience, and it nullifies all of the points that I've made so far. Alright, my second point as to why Linux is not as secure as you think is the X11 windowing system. Now, yes, I know almost every distribution, every desktop environment is pushing to get out the replacement, Wayland, but the fact of the matter is, X11 is still really common in desktops today. For example, Linux Mint is using the X11 windowing system, and the X11 windowing system is inherently flawed. It was designed back in a time where security was an afterthought, and the problem here is that X11 windows can spy on each other. Any window that's open in an X11 session can see and capture everything that's happening in another window in that session. Also, the X11 process generally runs as root, and that's mostly out of necessity because the system needs to be able to talk to the display hardware. However, because of this, X11 becomes a security liability, because if any flaw is found in X11, then that flaw can be used to get the same privileges as X11, which in this circumstance would be root. So there is a fix to this. If you run a desktop environment that's using the Wayland compositor, then you're going to be in good shape. And the better news is that most major distributions are already pushing Wayland out as default, such as the desktop environments GNOME and KDE. However, many people using NVIDIA graphics cards are unable to use Wayland, and also Wayland still breaks a lot of common functionality, such as sharing your screen in Discord. So a lot of people end up using X11 still, even if they have a distribution that defaults to a Wayland session. And yeah, so it's not a good situation, but again, this is not something new. This is something that distribution maintainers have been thinking of for a long time now. That's why we have Wayland, that's why Wayland is getting pushed as the default. But again, the problem is, everything is the responsibility of the user. Alright, and my third reason that Linux isn't as secure as you may think it is the fact that the modern packaging formats, Snap and Flatpak, are not very secure. You might be wondering, well, these are sandboxed application package formats. Wouldn't that make them more secure than a package that just runs bare on your distribution? And yes, but there are some problems with the implementation. So the number one problem that I have with snaps and Flatpaks is that they're uploaded by random people who aren't affiliated with the project most of the time. So like if you want to download Chrome from the FlatHub store, it's available, but it's packaged and uploaded by some random guy who has nothing to do with Chrome. When it comes to giving a program access to your computer, it's important that you're able to trust the person who wrote and packaged the software. And unfortunately, a lot of these people who are packaging Flatpaks and Snaps are just randoms who you've never heard of and you'll never hear of again. And Flatpaks and Snaps actually have a history of malicious packages being uploaded to them. most notably the recent snafu with the crypto miners and cryptocurrency wallet stealers that have prompted Canonical to put in place a manual review process for snap packages. The problem with that is that it's not sustainable. If they want snaps to take off, they're going to need to either staff a lot more people, which doesn't make monetary sense, or they're going to need to figure out automatic reviews, and those are going to have flaws in them. So yes, snaps they're doing something about it. Canonical's doing something about the flaws, but it's not sustainable, and it's not going to be fixed forever. And then finally, my final issue with snaps and Flatpaks is that they often have out-of-date binaries packaged in with them. Part of the magic about Flatpaks is that they include everything the application needs to run inside of that sandboxed container, which is a big win for security. That means most people who are putting together Flatpaks are responsible for keeping the packages inside of those Flatpaks up to date, and they're not very good at it. Link an article in the description down below, but it's true. A lot of software that you can get from Flatpaks comes bundled with insecure and outdated dependencies. So anyway, those were my 3 reasons why desktop Linux isn't as secure as you might think. Now, here's the thing about all 3 of these reasons. They're all fixable, and in fact, the community, the maintainers, the developers, they're all working on fixing these issues. So this is not going to be the case forever, but today, if desktop Linux became very popular, then we would have a lot of people running into a lot of security issues. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like. If you want to see more videos like this, then consider subscribing. And if you have any questions or if I got something wrong, leave a comment down below. I'm going to pin a comment at the top of this comment section that contains a synopsis of all of the corrections the community has made. I'm not going to get everything right all the time, so if I got something wrong, leave a comment down below, and I will pin that comment to the top of the video so that others can see the corrected information. Thank you for watching. My name is Patrick. I'll catch you in the next one.